Hey, what's going on everyone? It is Sam here from SG Angling. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Sam and I am a Musky exclusive YouTuber of the South. So I handle just south of Pittsburgh, that's where I fish, and then of course West Virginia as well. Please do make sure to head over, subscribe to the channel down below. I would greatly appreciate it. If you have been watching my channel, you'll know that season 2 is behind us. Now I'm filming for season 3, but there's a little bit of a gap here between episodes. So now what? Don't freak out, because I'm doing a brief mini-series called Back to the Basics of Musky Fishing. And this episode is going to be 5 tips to help you put more muskie in the net. But don't worry, it's not just going to be me talking to the camera like this right now. I'm going to incorporate footage from the previous season and do some screen sharing and do some other cool things so that you're not falling asleep in the episode. Now, before I begin, I will say that I have had a lot of newer musky fishermen that have subscribed to my channel and been asking me a lot of questions on social media, just engaging with the content. You guys are so awesome. Thank you very much. But a lot of great questions coming my way, and this video is for you guys, but it's also for experienced musky fishermen too. Hopefully I'll be able to throw out a few tips that will really help you. And just to preface this video, I'm not claiming to be the expert of all experts when it comes to musky fishing. I mean, obviously, if you're a guide and you're out on the water every single day, you're an expert. I'm not out on the water every single day because I have a job and a family and stuff like that. I'm a weekend warrior is what they call me. So, but I have made some mistakes in my past few years of musky fishing, and I want to be able to kind of structure 5 tips around those mistakes to shorten your learning curve and help you to put more muskie in the net. I would say over the last several years or so, I've probably visited 45 different bodies of water. I have been fishing species E-socks now for maybe 25 years, so I have some experience muskie fishing, and of course my favorite place was Eagle Lake, Ontario. That was where I first muskie fished, went out with a guide, and of course I would love to go back. So let's go into the first tip. And the first tip is for putting more muskies in the net is make sure that you are fishing high population bodies of water. And what I mean by that is bodies of water that have had significant stockings over the last 15 or 20 years. I have a formula for how I research bodies of water. I went into this a little bit in a previous video, but there's just basically 3 things, right? Number 1, I make sure that over the last 15 to 20 years, there's been stockings of at least a 1-to-1 ratio. And so what I mean by that is if it's a surface area acreage of say 300 acres for a body of water, I want to make sure that over the last 15 to 20 years or more, ideally, that they've stocked at least 300 muskies in there every year. In Ohio, for example, there's a 1-to-1 ratio of surface area acreage to stockings. So that's really good. For example, over in northern Pittsburgh, Pymatuning Reservoir, it's about 17,000 acres and they stock about 13,000. That's also very good. So I just want to make sure that there's consistently been a large amount of muskies put into a body of water over a significant period of time. That's the first thing. The second thing is proof of success that the stockings are, that the fish are surviving the stockings. On average, about 20% or so of muskies survive stockings. But with some bodies of water, it's a lot less than that. With some bodies of water, it's better than that. So how you know that is by going on, and you can go on, for example, the PA Fish and Boat website, and they do surveys of lakes every now and then to just make sure that the stockings are going well. So they use trap nets or electro, shocking, and they tell you how many muskies they're catching. So it gives you a good idea, and also gives you a good opportunity to look at what other types of fish they're catching. What's the forage base? Is it gizzard shad? Is it golden shiners? Is it perch? Are there other species that maybe you can match the hatch when you throw your lure out there? So really making sure that they are catching a lot of muskies and that they're surviving. We have one instance in Pennsylvania. There's a lake called, I think it was called Loyalhanna Lake. It's just east of Pittsburgh, and they put so many muskies, literally thousands of muskies in there year after year after year. And they went in and they did the surveys, and they kept catching like the same tiger muskie year after year. So they weren't having success. The fish weren't surviving. So they cut off the stocking program there, and then used the money and the resources to other lakes. So sometimes they just don't catch on for environmental reasons, and so it's really good to make sure that you're checking to make sure that the fish are surviving. The last thing is going on social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, going on forums, and just making sure that people are catching them. A lot of times, you'll see a bass fisherman that's holding up a muskie that he caught there, so making sure it's not too tough of a bite if you're trying to put a lot of muskies in the net, or maybe you're going out for the first time to muskie fish, making sure that anglers have been catching them at least recently. So that is the first tip. The second tip is making sure that you're putting a lot of time out on the water. Now, if you're a guide and you go out every day, you don't have to worry about this because that's your full-time job. But if you're a weekend warrior like myself and probably like most of you watching, you have to maximize your time out on the water, okay? And we're going to be talking a little bit about, number one, going out on consecutive day trips. So if you're going out on the weekend, try to go out on a Friday and a Saturday, or maybe go out on a week-long trip on vacation. Because when you string multiple days together, it takes the weather pattern and it puts the odds in your favor. If you go out every single Saturday, then it's a gamble. You might have an entire month where it's post cold front and sunny and you get skunked for an entire month, and that easily happens. So string multiple days together on trips or on the weekend. And sometimes if the cold front came through 2 days ago, the second day might not be good, but the third day might be good. And vice versa, if the cold front is happening on Monday of the following week, then as you approach that cold front, the fishing gets a little bit better. So the more days you have stringed up, the better. The other thing I would say is, I fish a lot of what we call blue collar states, right? So West Virginia and Pennsylvania and Ohio, these guys are laying down lines, they're coal mining, they're doing all kinds of physical labor in the weekdays. And if you go out fishing in the weekdays, it's unbelievable how empty the boat launches are. And so what I do is I actually take my PTO at work and I just take a random day off in the middle of the week and I go fishing. And it's amazing because I'm able to get the entire body of water to myself. And there's specific areas that boat traffic is very heavy over, like when people go over creek mouths and right by the boat ramp and by inlets, boat traffic tends to push muskies down and push them out, and it does the same to the bait fish as well. So I actually fish a lot of the areas that would normally get a lot of boat traffic, and I have a lot of success doing that. So if you can, take some of the time off that you have, put it for the weekday, and you'll oftentimes have the lake to yourself. But if you don't have that option and all you're doing is stuck to the weekends, make sure that you're spending a full day out on the water. That's the first thing. So waking up, getting out on the lake, maybe even before sunrise, because sunrise is oftentimes muskies will, they'll hit in those low light conditions, staying all the way to sunset, spending a full day on the water, but also making sure that you do proper research before you go out onto the body of water. So looking at things like, what's the water clarity? Has there been rain recently? If there's been a lot of rain and it's pushing the water levels up, the fish are probably going to be moving shallow. What's the temperature going to be like? What's the temperature been like? What's the direction of the wind been like? If it's been coming from the north, maybe you're going to want to spend your time on the southern shore because that's where a lot of the bait have been pushed up the last several days. What does the barometric pressure look like? Has there been a cold front recently? Is there going to be a cold front tomorrow? Is there maybe going to be a major cold front in 3 days, but there's going to be a minor cold front coming through tonight? Also, moon phases, right? Major moon phases are things like moon overhead and moon underfoot. And then minors are moon set and moon rise. And when those correlate with sunset and sunrise, that can be really great as well. So you want to make sure to kind of time it so that you're spending time on your best spots during the moon phases. So making sure you're just doing proper research and you are really maximizing your day out on the water. Super, super important. The third thing is always make sure, and this is the third tip, make sure that you're always fishing high percentage spots. What I mean by that is areas that hold a lot of muskies or should hold a lot of muskies. So there are spots that are that do hold fish year round. So we think about, at least in rivers, right? Dams hold fish year round. Inlets, right? Where water or streams are coming into the main part of the river. Eddies. So those would be kind of current breaks, right? Where you have some slack water and muskies are reserving their energy. A lot of bait fish are doing that as well. So muskies will kind of hang out in the eddies. Mud lines where clear water is coming into dirty water or vice versa. Then in natural lakes, you have things like weeds, right? We get a lot of milfoil here in this area. We don't get as much coontail, but we get, you know, maybe some cabbage, but a lot of milfoil, and fish will use those as ambush areas. Rock structure, current, even man-made, like cement pylons. Muskies will hang out near those as well. Reservoirs. If you find the bait, you will often find the muskies. Reservoirs, the muskies just seem to chase the bait because you don't really have a lot of weed structure most of the year in reservoirs. And so, you know, throughout the different times of the year, in the fall, in the spring, in the summer, where are the muskies? Well, they're normally where the bait are, except in the spawn. In that case, the muskies are shallow. They're just always going to be shallow, regardless of whether the bait are there or not. And it really is going to depend on the time of year as well. So you think about the spring. Muskies are moving into the spawn in spring. So where are you going to find them pre-spawn, and where are you going to find them in the spawn? Well, very similar areas. Very, you know, up on the flats. I find a lot of those fish adjacent to deep water. So I know I'm in a good spot year round, not just in the spawn, but year round, when I can turn around and within a couple casts I can hit 20 feet of water or more, at least. Those seem to be the most, you know, the best areas in terms of holding fish in the spawn, and even in the fall and the summer when fish are sliding up on the flats to either spawn or feed. And here's a tip for you as well, is boat ramps. As we're talking about kind of deep water nearby, boat ramps seem to hold a lot of fish. I've had a large percentage of fish this past season near and around boat ramps. And one of the reasons is because there's cement structure going into the water. So that's one of the first things to warm up in a body of water. And so bait fish will kind of congregate onto the boat ramp. In fact, when you first arrive at a boat ramp, really keep a close eye. And you notice a lot of little, you know, splashing going on in the surface a lot of times. It's because you have a lot of bait fish moving up into there. And the muskies will use the edge of darkness as ambush areas to kind of, you know, hang out in the dark areas of the water and let the bait fish come to them. They often do a lot of dredging down by boat ramps as well. So there's often deep water nearby. I often see, you know, 15, 20 feet of water near boat ramps. And, you know, a lot of times I'll just take a couple casts near there. It's also very low pressure areas, believe it or not. You go to a lot of bodies of water and it's truly amazing how many people pass it up. I often will sometimes take off, but I'll drop a couple lines in the water, trolling, as I'm on my way to the next spot. That's a really great tip for you too. Always make sure you're trolling when you're driving from one close spot to the next. If you're not going to be going full throttle, you're just going to be going a few miles an hour, or maybe in a wake zone, just drop down a couple lines and really you know, maximize your time out on the water, you know, using trolling as well. But, you know, going back to the seasonality piece of it, when you go into the summer, obviously we talked about the spring a little bit, right? So muskies are moving into their spawning areas in the spring, right? Pre-spawn and into the spawn. But then in the summertime, muskies, especially when there's a thermocline that develops in a lake, muskies are going to gravitate towards wherever the coolest, most oxygen-rich water is. Okay. So a lot of people say, well, you got to go into open water all the time. Muskies are always in open water. Trolling is your best option. Not necessarily. Okay. Now the thermocline will develop right around 13 to 16 feet, and it's where the coolest and most oxygen-rich water is. And so a lot of muskies, most of them will hang out around that time during their summer homes. But you know, cool water inlets, moving water that's cooler will have higher oxygen in it. But also, another thing is weeds. Weeds hold a lot of oxygen as well. So, you know, fishing certain structure that has a lot of oxygen, moving water, those can be areas that have a lot of, you know, a lot of muskies in it and a lot of bait, and the muskies follow the bait. Oftentimes after a really cold rain, if the water's warm, so if that water gets into the mid-70s, you know, that's when the fish are going after that oxygen-rich water. If you get a cold rain and the water's in the 70s, a lot of times the fish will fire right up after the cold rain because it dumped oxygen into the water. You'll see that a lot of times as well. So in the fall, then muskies move shallow again. So, you know, you want to go to those shallow areas, you know, in and around the structure, adjacent to deep water, but also don't overlook, you know, points. You know, bait really pack up around points too, in reservoirs, and, you know, oftentimes in rivers right by inlets. And then in the wintertime, it gets really crazy because the muskies' metabolism slow way down. So you basically just try to pick a few areas that have a lot of bait in them, and make sure you just spend all day there, right? Take 10 passes over that area, fish different baits, different cadences, and eventually a muskie will hit a very short feeding window throughout the day, and you can have an opportunity to catch one. And it's interesting too, because not all muskies chase bait. I have a body of water that I recently went to last year where the muskies are literally hiding in the weeds, and as a bait goes over their head, they come out and they grab it. So they're just using these ambush areas. They're not necessarily chasing bait. They're just conserving energy in these little confined areas, and they just wait for bait to pass by, and that's how they eat. So not all muskies are following bait. You know, that happens in rivers too. You know, fish use the current breaks. They hide in the slack water and they wait for a fish to float by, and boom, they come out and grab it. So keep in mind, not all fish in all bodies of water are necessarily following huge pods of bait around. A lot of times they're using these ambush areas, and those can be really key areas as well. All right, on to tip number 4. I'm going to make these next two pretty quick. But by the way, you like my muskie mug? From Pittsburgh Pottery. Pretty nice. The 4th tip is fishing baits that are constant producers of muskie. If I was to only throw 3 lures, it would be a bucktail like this, double-bladed one, or a single-bladed one. Those are, you know, bucktails are the top producing muskie bait of all time. The second top producing muskie bait of all time would be a bulldog, right? Single tail bulldog, okay? Or a suet, which is a dive and rise style jerkbait. So those would be the 3 lures I have. But if I was to really simplify things and tell you that there's five lure categories, I went into this in a previous video, but if there's 5 lure categories, it's bucktail, topwater, so any sort of spinnerbait, right? Like a long arm spinnerbait or a bucktail. Topwater, rubber, crankbaits, and jerkbaits. So let me go into them really quick. Make sure you have each one of these in your tackle box, and then we'll go on to our last tip of the day. So you can get a single-bladed bucktail like this one. This is a number 7 fluted Indiana. I made this. And you can get a double-bladed one too. So double-bladed, this is a new 7.9 trigger by Musky Mayhem Tackle. Offset blades, let's see, what is that? Number 7 Colorado, number 9 Magnum Colorado blade. These are offset blades, put out a nice thump. So make sure to grab one of those. And then also make sure, because a lot of people don't throw these anymore, long arm safety pin style spinnerbaits. This is a number 7 fluted Indiana, number 6 Colorado. And notice on all my bucktails and spinnerbaits, I have a little Mr. Twister. You have to make sure to have those on each one of your bucktails. I'm a huge advocate of that. Why wouldn't you? Right? Why wouldn't you? Now, if it's too long of a grub, then the muskies can nip it and miss. But if you got a nice short one like this, they don't miss it. And it doesn't hurt, can't hurt, but it helps because it wiggles in front of the muskie in their lateral line, and for whatever reason, it just drives them nuts. It makes them commit when they're following. So I love adding a little 4-inch Mr. Twister onto my spinnerbaits. The next style is topwater. I want to make sure that I have at least 2 style topwaters in my tackle box at all time. I like a black prop style topwater. You can get a Joe Booker top raider, or you can get a whopper plopper like this one. I'm going to put a link for all in the description here of all the lures, so you can just click and buy if you want to. And then you have walk the dog style. These go back and forth in the water. Really great for cloudy days where the water is relatively calm, and working it in and out of structure, really thick structure like thick weeds and rocks and wood. Not meant for long bomb casts, but just working it back and forth. Here's another loud rattle, nice topwater walk the dog style. The third category of lure is going to be a jerkbait. So I talked to you before about a suic. So you got to make sure to have a suic, or Chaos Tackle makes the Navin. These are great baits, and again, to be worked like a glide bait, nice accentuated paws. And then if I can get it here, it's hooked on my camera stand. This 6-inch Phantom glide bait by Phantom. You can get these as well. Good to have these in the tackle box, but I would say the suic has much better hooking percentage than the glide bait. So if you have an option of throwing the suic or the glide bait, if you can get away with it, throw the suic, because it has a better hooking percentage than your glide bait. Crankbaits are a very overwhelming category because there's so many of them, and a lot of people are making them. But I'm going to simplify things for you and tell you that you can narrow down all of your crankbaits down to 2 companies, which will have most of your bases covered, okay, for trolling and for casting and for the water columns. Rapala and Joe Bucher Outdoors. I'll put links in the description down below, just like I said. But I would have a Super Shad in your tackle box. This is great, great lure, timeless, can be casted, trolled. Right, here's a Joe Bucher shallow raider, 7-inch shallow raider. Got to make sure to have one of these in your tackle box. Here's an X-Rap 30 by Rapala. This can be, you know, if you really crank it down, you can get it down to 30 feet, but this is really good for walking the dog at like 10 to 15 feet. Muskies don't see too many lures walk the dog back and forth that deep down, and this thing has unreal action. So you got to make sure, you know, go out, buy a few Rapala lures. They're relatively inexpensive. Go out and buy some Joe Bucher Outdoors lures. They're relatively inexpensive as well. There's one more category of bait here, and we got to make sure to talk about it. It's rubber. Now, I did talk about the bulldog, okay? So you got to make sure to have a bulldog in your tackle box. Here's a bulldog, right? This is a regular size bulldog. I sell them in all different sizes. I like the regular size for down south. It's not too big, it's not too small. And then the next top producing rubber bait of 2021 is the Chaos Tackle Medusa. This is a regular size Medusa. They make a smaller size as well. There's actually 6 sizes of them, but this is one of the smaller ones. This is a bigger one. Gotta make sure to have a Medusa, but there's one other lure that's a top producer of muskie that's a rubber bait, and this over time, other than the bulldog, is the top producing it's the top producing muskie bait of all time on rubber other than a bulldog. It's also going to be the most versatile lure that you have in your tackle box without a doubt. There's no argument about this. And most people don't have this lure. It's the Big Joe. Outstanding action. It can be straight retrieved, pull paused, trolled, and jigged. So in that sense, and it can be worked all depths of the water column. In that sense, it's the most versatile lure in your tackle box by far. There's some crankbaits and other types of rubber that are versatile, but they can't be worked quite like this. It's very easy to use, and most muskies have not seen this in a body of water, so it's definitely a high pressure type lure. So definitely make sure you have one of these in your tackle box as well. Big Joe. All right, the number 5 tip, the top tip. Got to make sure to do this every single time if you're going to catch more muskies. Always make sure to do a figure 8 at the side of the boat every single time. You've heard me talk about this before. The reason why 80% of the action that happens with muskie will be at boat side. And you have to make sure to do a figure 8 because a lot of those muskies will be following in. Those muskies will be following in from deep down, again, using that edge of darkness as an ambush area. And what I mean by edge of darkness is there's the area of the water that the light can penetrate, and then there's that layer where the light can no longer penetrate. And so muskies kind of use that darker area and the eyes on top of their head, right, to keep an eye on what's going on where the light does penetrate. And they do the same thing with your lure. So you got to make sure to do a figure 8. And when you go into that top turn, that really seems to trigger the strikes. And it's 3 things that trigger that strike. A change in speed, so you speed the lure up when the muskie comes to the boat. You change direction while you're changing the depth. Okay, so you're reeling it in, right? You're speeding it up. Then you dip your rod down into the water to get it down farther, and you speed it up and you turn it, and then when you come up to the top turn, you raise it up in the water column, you slow it down, okay, and you turn it. And those 3 things seem to trigger the strike. I like doing a figure 8 instead of a circle, okay? I've talked to a lot of guys about this, and you know, one of the reasons why people like to do a circle is because you can go wider on it. I understand that, but there are some advantages that you can have on the figure 8 that you can't have on a circle. Number 1, it allows you to set the fish up better. There are 2 top turns in a figure 8. How many top turns are there in a circle? There's only 1. So you have basically double the chance of catching that fish in the top turn at 12 o'clock. When that rod hits 12 o'clock, that's where you want that fish to hit, and you have an opportunity to get that lure at 12 o'clock twice in one figure 8 versus only once in a circle. And the reason why it's important to hook that fish at 12 o'clock is so that you can set the hook back into the fish, getting the fish hooked on the corner of the mouth instead of on the beak. Does that make sense? If you go into the top turn of a circle and the fish doesn't hit, Now you have to create separation by continuing your circle, and if the fish hits on the inside turn, then you're in an awkward position, right? You can only pull the fish towards you, which is going to cause a beak hooked fish. And then a beak hooked fish has more of a chance of getting off than a fish that's hooked in the corner of the mouth. It's just as simple as that according to statistics. So I like to do a figure 8 so I can set the hook back into the fish, but it also allows me to create separation, okay, on the inside turn on a figure 8 if the fish doesn't hit on the top. So if I'm seeing nipping happening at the top and then I dive the lure back in, I'm able to create separation and then hang it again at the top. Read the fish a little bit better, right? Again, if it's kind of lethargic and it's only nipping at the top, and you want to dive the lure back down and create that hunter instinct by speeding it up, then you can hang it at the top, and a lot of times that muskie will hit it the second or third time around. So it just allows you to read the fish a little bit better when you're doing an 8 versus a circle, and allows you to create separation a little bit better, allows you to change the depth and the direction a little bit easier. It's just smoother, and again allows you to kind of have an opportunity to hook the fish twice on a top turn versus only once on a circle. So I'm a huge advocate, obviously, for figure 8. Now, people do say in a circle, you know, it comes out wider, so if you got a really big fish following, like a 50 plus, you want to do a circle to allow the fish to turn a little bit easier. I understand that. I have never had a situation where I've had to do that. Hopefully that changes this year, but I've never had a fish way over 50 where I've had to, you know, make a decision in my head, am I going to do an 8 or a circle? So I can't really add any advice on that. But that would be the one instance where maybe a circle would be something where I would advocate for that. But that's pretty much it. Again, got to make sure to do a figure 8 at the side of the boat. It'll increase how many catches you have every year. I can't tell you how few catches I would have had if I didn't do a figure 8 every single time. So that's absolutely essential. But those are the 5 tips. That's pretty much it. If you're looking to put more muskies in the net, these are the 5 tips I would suggest. And we just scratched the surface. Of course, I could spend a lot more time on this, but thanks for being patient and listening to this today. Hopefully it helped, and it helps put more muskies in the net. The next episode, I was thinking about doing it on equipment. So things like, you know, low budget rods, reels, leaders, line, things like that. Keeping it low budget, but still high quality. But if there's another topic you want me to cover, I will be happy to go over that instead. I just want to do what you guys want to do. So let me know in the comments down below. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram, SG_angling, and Facebook, SG Angling. Do make sure to subscribe, like the video here, and let me know what you thought of it. And I'll be doing another video here in the next couple of weeks. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.